The majestic strains of the pipe organ spread out in concentric circles. On both sides of the Virgin Road, guests in colorful robes filled the seats, and the whole ceremony was filled with solemn dignity. In terms of formality, it was as perfect as a duke's wedding. However, there was no wedding-like joy or bustle to be seen anywhere. I think it would be more appropriate to call it a funeral. It really is. Both the groom's guests and the bride's guests have dark faces. Please control your facial expressions, no matter how uncomfortable you feel. Am I the only one who can do this? I have to walk into the middle of this frozen ceremony and stand next to a man who will kill me. Now, Elise Richter, please come in. The priest, who did not know whether he had come to officiate at a wedding or to attend a funeral mass, ordered my entrance grimly. I had practiced all day yesterday, rehearsing in my head, but I couldn't help feeling nervous. I walked slowly forward, kicking the hem of my dress with my toes, just as I had practiced with all my strength to prevent an accidental fall. But the skirt is not the problem with the wedding dress I am wearing. My breasts. I know my breasts are big and beautiful, but they are too exposed. This is the first time I am wearing it. No matter how good a sensual dress is, isn't it a bit too much on a wedding day? As if I was not the only one who thought so. The glances that looked at me clearly contained negative emotions: disgust, contempt, disrespect, or lust. I walked over to the man who will one day slit my throat, cutting through the heavy air that I couldn't even feel the flakes of favor. Of course, he didn't even look at me. To him, I must be like a curse or punishment given to him. Whoa, I didn't fall down anyway. Step 1 is clear. I bent my knees and bowed my head slightly towards the priest to show my courtesy, and breathed a sigh of relief. The priest nodded his head indifferently and began to recite a prayer of blessing. All things in the world praise you, my God, Hershon. I bless you both, beautiful man and woman, who today will build a happy and warm family in the arms of the Creator today. Well, I don't think I will ever be able to create a happy or warm future with this man. In this situation, knowing that a man who hates me is going to slit my throat, it's extremely unclear whether I'll be able to get either a happy or warm family or a future. But there is no way for me to deny or avoid this situation beforehand. When I opened my eyes, I was in the body of a woman who was going to get married in a week. How crazy the process was, too. Misfortune never comes alone. That's what happened that day. Mind-ji? I told you not to do this. Yes? This is Senior Young-Yoon's. I'm sorry, manager. Minji still hasn't gotten the hang of Excel, and I'll make sure she gets it right. On Young-Yoon, who had done all kinds of bad things just because she was a senior who came a year ahead of me, blamed me for her mistakes. Manager Park, who printed out a messy Excel spreadsheet, gave me a harsh look and nagged me for a long time before going back. I looked at Young-Yoon with a confused expression on my face, but she sat down in her seat as if tired without even looking at me. How long is On Young-Yoon going to live like that? I don't know. She's been cursing since morning. Minji, cheer up. My coworker cheered me up via Messenger, but it didn't give me much strength. Maybe it was because I saw her going to buy coffee with Young-Yoon at the end of lunchtime? I was in a bad mood, but this is such a common thing that I thought it was just bad luck, and I deserved it. It was Friday, and I had a date with my boyfriend after work. But it wasn't until after work that I got a message from my boyfriend canceling our date. Baby, I got the weekend shift and will be working overtime today. I'm sorry. See you next week. I'll buy you something tasty. Aside from not being able to see him all weekend, I was upset to hear that my boyfriend, who had been suffering from overtime lately, had to work through the weekend. If I hadn't stopped by X Mall, the meeting place today, I wouldn't have seen my boyfriend holding hands with another woman. I stared blankly at their backs as they walked away, and only after they were completely out of sight did I take out my phone and text him. Speaking of working overtime, the woman you're holding hands with must be your boss at work. You two look like you're really working hard. Just bury your bones at work and don't contact me in the future. Even when I witnessed my boyfriend cheating on me with my own eyes. Strangely, it didn't seem like my hands were shaking or I was going to cry. Actually, I wasn't even mad. Perhaps I was unconsciously expecting such a breakup. 'Cause I'm not worthy of him. He is a sincere man who grew up in a wealthy family and works for a fairly large company. He is a good-looking man, moderately tall, kind, and educated. Unlike me, who comes from a poor family and tries hard not to show that I have no money, he is a man who is comfortable with a simple lifestyle. I am grateful that such a man treats me kindly, but at the same time, I could not help thinking, until when will this go on? And that when is today. I'm out of money. This weekend, I'll have to pay for a lot of novels in the cart and read them. Thinking about it that way made me feel a little better. It's my pleasure to read profane, romance fantasy, novels before going to bed. Even if I don't have enough pocket money, I have to open one free chapter a day or wait for it. When I thought I could save money to meet an imaginary man and pay for some novels in the cart, my steps back home became lighter in an instant. But it was just my mistake that I thought the bad things of the day ended there. What are you doing now? Hurry up and come here, you punk. Huh? Appa? My older brother was waiting in front of the door to my studio next to the steep stairs in a shabby multi-family house. Before I could even get close, the smell of alcohol made my body stiff. Hey, give me whatever money you have. What? I don't have any money. You have a card. Get some cash on hand and give me some. Appa, did you gamble again? Oh, damn it, you babble a lot. Who are you to nag me? Your savior, who kept you alive so far. I was deafened by my brother's sudden shout. But I was more anxious about whether there was someone next door, or maybe listening to this. Will that savior excuse haunt me until I die? Under the pretext of giving me who had leukemia a bone marrow transplant 13 years ago, my older brother always shamelessly asked me for money. I don't know how much I thought it would have been convenient if I had died without a bone marrow transplant at that time. Even more so today. I tend to forget bad things quickly, but I'm tired of this situation repeating itself. No. Do you know how much money you borrowed from me? Pay it back and ask for a loan. What? This damn bitch. My brother slapped me on the cheek. There was a flash of light in front of my eyes, and my ears were deaf. I felt a strange sensation as if I was floating in the air. Oh, there are stairs behind me. The moment I thought that, immediately after, I rolled down the stairs and hit my head hard somewhere at the end of the stairs. That was my last memory as a Korean woman in her 20s, Choi Minji. I felt as if I had been asleep for a long time. I slowly regained consciousness and realized that I was not dead. I opened my eyes, thinking that I was in a hospital, but I saw a scene that could never be a hospital. Princess room. It was a room similar to the Palace of Versailles that I had seen on the internet. Besides, I didn't feel any pain in my body, which should have been broken or at least badly bruised. No, I even felt more energetic than usual. What? How long have I been unconscious? When I got up from the bed, thick, reddish-brown hair flowed down my shoulders. After suffering from leukemia, my hair was thin and I had never dyed it. With fine hair in my hands, I was stunned, and someone knocked on the door. It's Sophia, my lady. Sophia? I'm coming in. Then the door opened and a young woman with a slightly scary look came in with a copper wash basin on something like a tray. Her clothes look like the maid's clothes that cosplayers often wear. Master ordered you to stop by the office after you get ready. Yes. Hurry. I had to wash my face, comb my hair, and wear a slick dress by this woman without knowing what was happening. And as I stood in front of the mirror to check my makeup, I realized that things were going very strangely. Who are you? My appearance in the mirror was so unfamiliar. She is a Westerner with red hair, light brown eyes, white skin, and a glamorous body. She's pretty, but she looks a little scrawny. It's a good impression for someone who is going to ask for a refund. And in the meantime, someone's memories slowly began to flow into my mind. Edith Riegelhoff, a 22-year-old noblewoman who is to be married a week later. It was strange to have the memory of a noblewoman in the minds of people living in the 21st century. But it was even stranger that her name was not unfamiliar. Edith Riegelhoff. Where had I heard that name before? Who is she? Oh, wait. No way. I remember. It's the name of the villainess in the Rofane novel I finished yesterday. It was a novel titled I Refuse Your Obsession with a Cider One Narration. A cliché story, and usually refers to an unimpeded, exciting, and rapid development. In other words, the world is created only for the main characters. The opposite of cider is sweet potato, a novel with a convoluted story / too much drama. Nonsense. Did I possess the villainess of a Rofane novel? I must have lost my mind. Not the female lead, but the villainess. No, I possessed before I became a villainess. Please wait in your room for a while. I will come after receiving permission from the master. The maid, Sophia, spoke curtly and left without hearing my reply. I immediately recalled the contents of the novel, trying to calm my pounding heart. I must pull myself together at this point. The female lead is Liz Sinclair, right? And the male lead is Cliff Ludwig. I was taken aback, but fortunately, I was able to clear my head quickly. It was a novel that I enjoyed reading, so it's fortunate that I have a lot of memories of it. Liz Sinclair, the female lead of the novel, is a bright, innocent, and beautiful girl like the goddess of spring. However, handicaps exist for all protagonists. She is the illegitimate daughter of Count Sinclair and a maid. A circumstance that makes progress or success difficult. The Count has put the beautiful Liz on the family register, thinking that one day he will be able to take advantage of her. But her family disapproves and harasses her. As the persecution in the family intensifies, the Duke and Duchess of Ludwig, who have come to stay at the Sinclair mansion for a time, take her with them. And that's where she meets Cliff, the male lead, and Declan, the second male lead. Cliff and Declan are brothers from the Ludwig family who fall in love with the same woman at the same time and try hard to win Liz's heart regardless of her feelings. They give Liz what she wants and confront what threatens her without her knowledge. She is the object of their obsession. However, like any naive and good-natured female lead, she shrewdly solves the cases that befall her without noticing that the love the two men shower on her is slightly excessive. Eventually, she marries Cliff, the eldest son of the Ludwig family, and becomes the Duchess of Ludwig, and the Sinclair family, who persecuted her, regret it, and are punished. It's a common plot, but it's such an interesting story. And Edith Riegelhoff is one of Liz's many enemies. Am I in the 3rd volume now? Edith is married to the second male lead in the 4th volume, and it's only a week away. The Ludwig's second son, Declan, who also loves Liz, is forced into a marriage of convenience for the sake of the family. The Riegelhoffs are villains who pretend to support the imperial faction and secretly join the opposition faction to overthrow the Ludwigs. However, unlike Declan, who hates Edith, Edith falls in love with Declan at first sight. She is blinded by jealousy and does everything she can to kill Liz. In addition, while acting as a spy for Count Riegelhoff, She conspires with her maid Sophia to steal internal documents and secrets from the Ludwig family. I'm raising my own death flag. Of course, Edith's evil deed is discovered by Liz, and in the end, the Riegelhoff family falls together. She dies at the hands of her husband, Declan. She really is an insignificant villain. I remember there were some bad comments saying that she was the perfect enemy of women, 3 composition, full of jealousy. The original word in Korean is yojokyo, which means a woman's enemy is another woman. Anyway, apart from that confrontational composition, I couldn't understand Edith the whole time I was reading the novel. She has a pretty face, nice body, healthy, good family, lots of money. But why is she so obsessed with her husband? If I were her, I would give him up and live happily. I knew very well that people in love often make irrational decisions, but it took me too long to understand because I didn't have enough money. My wish is to live without worrying about money or worrying about health. My family was not rich, and I even had leukemia when I was young. Although I received a bone marrow transplant from my brother and was declared cured, I was not completely healthy because of the strong drugs and chemotherapy. On top of that, my gambling-addicted brother, who had to move between jobs without even finishing high school, robbed me of my money under the pretext of repaying the favor for the bone marrow transplant, and my parents had neither the strength nor the will to stop him. So, love was a luxury for me. According to Maslow's 5-step needs theory, I was in a very weak position, barely meeting my physiological needs. Still, the reason I had a boyfriend was that I still needed someone to lean on. I needed someone to protect me. Maybe. I hoped that someone like the male lead in a Rafan novel would save me. Of course, that didn't happen. Anyway, that made me envy Edith more than Liz, and I was frustrated by her choice. Why doesn't she throw away her love for a man who loves another woman? If she just gave up her love, she could live a comfortable life. If you are in a harmonious family with lots of money and good health, you should be grateful. Edith doesn't know how happy it is not to worry about money and to be healthy. Why does she desire anything else? I'd rather be Edith. I am very confident that I will do well. I never thought that God would really give me the role of Edith. The saying that words become seeds doesn't exist for no reason. Wait. Come to think of it, my wish came true. Words spoken without intention can sometimes have unexpected results. So I transmigrated into a novel and possessed a villainess? If it was someone who didn't know anything, it would be overwhelming, but this was a dream situation for me, who had mastered all the cliché Rofan novels. My bewilderment gradually turned to joy. Yes, this should be the price of my unfair death. Hooray! The memories of Edith Riegelhoff hadn't completely come back to my mind yet, but they were slowly coming back, which was much better than starting out without knowing anything. Apparently, there will be a dinner this evening with the 2 families who will be joined in matrimony. It seems that God took pity on me and gave me the memory of the original character, which is rare in most Rafan novels. Just in time, Sophia returned. Miss, Master has allowed your visit. Okay, I'll go. I took a deep breath and made my way to Count Riegelhoff's office as Edith's memory told me to. Good morning, Father. It's weird to call a stranger father, but it's not hard to be an idiot with a lot of money. Even if you ask me to act cute, I can do it as much as you want. However, Count Riegelhoff's reaction was quite different from what I expected. Isn't it too late for morning? His gaze looking up and down as if trying to find fault was like the gaze of Manager Park at my workplace. And only then did the memory of Edith's situation in the Riegelhoff family come to my mind. Huh? WW, what's this? I don't remember all the full content of the novel I Refuse Your Obsession. But Edith is definitely an arrogant villainess because she grew up only finally. However, According to the memory that just popped into my head, that was just a mere fake image to deceive the world. Edith Riegelhoff was nothing more than a puppet of Count Riegelhoff. She dressed Edith in fancy dresses and expensive jewelry to flaunt the family's wealth and show off the honor of the family with her arrogant manner. Edith's beauty, voluptuous body, and flamboyant style were all billboards for the Riegelhoff family. In reality, she was a physically and emotionally abused daughter who desperately wanted to be loved by her parents and brother. This is a scam. How can this be? As I was still in a state of shock, Count Riegelhoff spoke in a sharp tone. "You can't make a mistake tonight or the Ludwigs will kick us out." "Yes, father. I will negotiate with them to let 3 of our family's maids work for you. You should say straight up that you cannot entrust your body to anyone other than our family's maids. It would be nice to scratch their egos if they can't even allow that much. Can you do well?" I don't know what he's talking about, but I have to pretend that I do. Count Riegelhoff, who had been writing tonight's scenario for a long time, did not pay attention to my answer and started to curse Duke Ludwig. Only then did I begin to understand why Count Riegelhoff wanted to destroy the Ludwigs so badly. So a man who was worse off than you is now better off and you're pissed off, isn't that right? The current Duke of Ludwig and Count Riegelhoff had been rivals since childhood. However, Count Ludwig, who was less powerful than Count Riegelhoff at the time, was awarded the dukedom after his great exploits in the war. Count Riegelhoff believed that the dukedom was stolen from the Riegelhoffs. It was supposed to be mine because of my grandfather's great achievements. But he stole it, and the emperor is a fool to give a dukedom to that bastard. Okay, well, that's a mental victory. I get it. But why do I have to be the scapegoat for this revenge? According to my newly formed memories, I was going to marry Duke Ludwig's son as bait to hide Count Riegelhoff's dark intentions, and he knew very well that if anything went wrong, I would be the first to lose my head. Why is my family like this in my past and present life? What did I do wrong? I felt like I was about to burst into tears, but I held it together. This wasn't a family where a daughter could cry and be comforted. Still, it wasn't all hopeless. In a week's time, I'll be out of this house, and I'll find a way to live in the Duchy of Ludwig, the main setting of the original story. Yes, there's a crisis at the beginning of every villainous possession story, and as long as I don't do things like Edith did in the original, I'll survive. I made up my mind and prepared myself for the dinner between the 2 families. Despite my best intentions, I was overwhelmed by the majesty of the Ludwig mansion. Riegelhoff mansion was enough to dazzle me, but a duke is on another level. Apparently, winning a war against a neighboring country was a big deal, so the mansion is incredibly large and luxurious. If the Ludwigs, who were less well off than him, were given a mansion like this, is it any wonder Count Riegelhoff was so jealous? The difference was big enough to make me think so. And I'm sure it wasn't just a mansion. I don't know, but I'm sure he got more, like estates and coffers of gold. Anyway, it didn't matter to me. It's more important that I don't get beaten up for interrupting the negotiations today. Count Riegelhoff will try to negotiate to send some maids to Ludwig's mansion. Of course, it's not because he's worried about my safety or livelihood. The maids he wanted to send with me were all mercenaries, trained in assassination and theft. How can you even call them maids in the first place? Especially Sophia, the maid who brought in my washing water, who was quite a favored one, and who had been assigned to guard and watch over me at the Riegelhoff mansion. She is deferential to me, but in terms of power within the mansion, she is above me. And she is the one who helped Edith do most of her evil deeds in the original story. In other words, my life would be considerably safer if I don't take Sophia with me. I took a slow, deep breath, trying not to show my nervousness, and followed behind Count Riegelhoff and my brother, Shane Riegelhoff. Count Riegelhoff, Sir Shane Riegelhoff and Miss Elise Rifter have arrived. After a polite introduction by the butler, we were ushered into a large dining room. At one side of a large, elongated table are the members of the Ludwig family. What a surprise to see characters I've only read about or imagined from the writer's description. I didn't think much of it when I saw Count Riegelhoff, but when I saw the main characters of the original story, I was excited. That person is Duke Axel Ludwig, and next to him is Duchess Jocelyn Ludwig, and that's Cliff, the male lead. As expected, the male lead is so handsome. With black hair and golden eyes, he looks cold when he shows no expression. But when he smiles, his beauty is inhuman. His muscular body made me drool just by looking at his clothes. He's the most handsome man I've ever seen. My heart is aching. But Cliff is only for Liz, the female lead. The one I'm going to marry is the one next to Cliff. Oh my God. Cliff has just been demoted to the second most handsome man I've ever seen. I can see now why Edith is so crazy about him. He's an enemy, but whatever. If he's got that visual, you have no choice but to be crazy about him. Declan Ludwig is a handsome man with black hair and mysterious gray eyes that give him a somewhat rebellious aura. He has furrowed brows, a cold gaze that shows his discomfort, a straight, sharp nose and jawline, and an overall more sensual face than Cliff's. His physique is similar to Cliff's, with a broad chest and a slim waist. And then again, thick thighs, oops. I guess I'm sexualizing them too much. Anyway, let's just say that my unjust death in my last life has been compensated by today's eye candy. And the final visual shock came from the female lead, Liz Sinclair. Despite not being a member of the Ludwig family, Liz, who also attends the dinner, is so beautiful that the novel describes her as the goddess of spring. Light blonde hair that seems to flow on its own, eyes that look like the blue waters of Jeju Island. I feel ashamed that my expression is so poor, smooth, and soft, looking fair skin, and a delicate body that I want to protect even though I'm also a woman. Such is the majesty of a Rofan novel's female lead. I gasped at her beauty. I had to force myself to keep my mouth shut as I felt the word wow coming out of my mouth. But as if I were the only one mesmerized by Liz's beauty, Count Riegelhoff's brow furrowed in displeasure. You have taken the trouble to come. I have prepared some veal for you, as Miss Edith says she likes it, but I hope you find it to your liking. It is a great relief to me, as a father sending his daughter away, to know that you care so much, but Count Riegelhoff's voice trailed off at the Duke of Ludwig's polite greeting. Then he continued, weren't we supposed to have only members of both families present at this dinner? Cliff and Declan turned cold at Count Riegelhoff's question, clearly uncomfortable with Liz's presence. They are doing what male leads always do. Liz is already part of our family. I asked her to come down because I thought it would be a good idea to say hello, as they will see each other often in the future. The Duke of Ludwig explained, but he didn't look too pleased either. It was clear that if the Count said one more word, he wouldn't let it go. Why are you doing this already? I tried to defuse the situation before it got out of hand, but Liz spoke first. I'm sorry. It's not a place for me. Declan grabbed Liz's wrist as she turned to leave. Liz, there's no reason for you to be sorry. You're part of our family. Those who don't understand that don't deserve to be in our family. In the original story, it's written that Edith's eyebrows rose sharply at this moment, and it's understandable, but I have no intention of doing so. My life depended on looking good to Liz, and when I see a pretty girl, I want to get to know her. The Duke and Declan are right, Father. She's someone I'll be seeing all the time when I get married, so what's the harm in saying hello to her now? I can't tell if I smiled properly because I was nervous, but I did my best anyway. Count Riegelhoff nodded and smiled humanely. Well, Miss Liz is kind of like a little sister to Lord Declan, isn't she? Wow, this is a thing to say the least. Count Riegelhoff had noticed that both of the Ludwig sons were smitten with Liz. I fidgeted inwardly, but Declan didn't say anything and looked away. Liz could only stare at him in bewilderment as he dodged the question without answering. Now then, let us begin the dinner. Duke Ludwig quieted the uncomfortable atmosphere, as if to say that he would not allow any further disturbances, and the waiting servants began to serve the food. Hooray for the world of aristocracy in a Rophane novel, where all you have to do is sit still. A sumptuous menu prepared by the best chefs is placed right in front of you. I was worried that Count Riegelhoff was going to go off on a rant again, but he's very civilized and polite in front of everyone, probably because he's the kind of person who stabs in the back with a smile. But it was all a facade. After our second glass of wine, Count Riegelhoff cut to the chase. By the way, I have no doubt that the Duke and Duchess will care for Edith. It's not easy for parents to send their daughter off to marry. Count Riegelhoff looked at me wistfully before turning his attention back to the Duke and Duchess of Ludwig. The Duke of Ludwig nodded with a look that said, "It's finally happening. I completely understand your feelings, but don't worry too much. I will personally take care of her so that she doesn't lack for anything." Oh, who am I to ask such a favor of the Duke? I just want to send along some of my daughter's maids. Perhaps the maids we've had for a long time will be more in tune with Edith's tastes. The crisis has finally arrived, but Duke Ludwig, being the perceptive man that he was, did not answer immediately, but paused. After all, even Edith could be seen as a spy for the Riegelhoffs, and it would not be out of place for Count Riegelhoff to bring in more of his own hand-picked people. Our family's maids are quite skilled even by Miss Edith's standards. Did Duchess Ludwig not bring a single maid with her when she married? Well, in many ways, the conversation was in Count Riegelhoff's favor. It would have allowed him to bring Sophia in with Edith. Count Riegelhoff looked at me again, this time with a kind and affectionate look on his face, as if to conclude the negotiation. "My dear Edith, Duke Ludwig is unwilling to allow you to bring a few maids with you. I don't know what to do." I felt a chill run down my spine at the thought of bursting into tears at any moment, but I had to keep my wits about me. My decision here would determine my life. I'm fine. I don't need to bring a maid. Edith. After all, the Ludwig family's maids are only as good as ours. And I don't want any maids to leave our mansion because of me, so you don't have to think about sending me a maid, Father. The Duke and his two sons were watching me with sharp eyes. They seemed to think I was going to cushion myself and then demand other terms. But I am innocent, gentlemen. Please forget my father's request, Your Excellency. My father is too anxious to give me away in marriage when I am still so young. No, well, the Duke of Ludwig sounds like he's in trouble. I can't be weak-hearted here. As the daughter-in-law of the Ludwig family, I don't want to be seen as a spoiled lady. I'll come alone, and I'm sure the Duchess will have a good maid for me. I forced myself to smile as benignly as I could. The corners of Edith's eyes were slightly upturned, making it difficult for me to put on an innocent face. The Duke and Duchess nodded their heads in agreement, albeit with a hint of irritation, and Count Riegelhoff's face hardened. As soon as we were in the carriage and out of the mansion gate, Count Riegelhoff burst out. "Are you out of your mind?" I was afraid he would slap me, but I'm glad he didn't. From now on, I have to act with all my might. "Father, didn't you see the look on Duke Ludwig's face earlier?" "What?" "He had already realized what you meant when you said you wanted to send the maids along. What could I do if you made such a blatant demand?" Count Riegelhoff's eyelids trembled at my words. It must have been strange to hear his daughter, who was always so good at doing what he told her to do, stand up and say something out of left field. But I couldn't back down now. What's the point of bringing a maid in if you've already aroused suspicion? There will be more prying eyes around, and that's why I'd rather not have one, Father. Have you forgotten what the primary purpose of this marriage was? It was to dispel their suspicions. First, we must blunt the blade of vigilance they have set upon us. Well, that's what you get when you're a marketing department staff speaker on the Korean peninsula who's been practicing presentation skills since college. As if on cue, the Count's fierce expression softened. So, what are you going to do next? For now, I'll enter alone, and when their suspicions are allayed, I'll make an excuse, homesickness or whatever, and tell them I'm bringing a maid with me just for a while. They won't stop me from doing that. Don't spoil things by being impatient, Father. In the end, Count Regelhoff was persuaded by me. I felt as if the sword aimed at my throat had moved 10 centimeters away. And here I am, after a crazy week, standing in this black comedy of a wedding. The priest is still reciting prayers. In Korea, the trend is to do away with long, boring ceremonies. But I guess that hasn't caught on here yet. And so the faithful children of the Creator build another nest. Hershen, bless the rings they share, and the everlasting covenant that is in them. Finally, the exchange of rings. I turned toward Declan as I had practiced. Unlike me, who turned easily in my uncomfortable dress, he turned slowly, barely, as if he really didn't want to do it. His formal attire, now that I could see it properly, was stunningly gorgeous. But I felt like I was asking for a major accident if I stared at him now. Fortunately, this revealing dress was keeping me sane. Yes, Declan. I know how you feel, so let's get this over with. I mean it. I want this uncomfortable, awful time to be over too. 2 ring-bearers approached with the rings on a small cushion. They couldn't be more than 7 years old, and they are so cute. In contrast to the adults of both families, who looked as if they were about to eat each other, the cheeks of these children were flushed with the joy of being a part of a beautiful wedding. I could only smile at them as they melted my heart. Declan glared at me, then picked up the ring he politely held out my left hand, and Declan slipped the bridal ring onto my left ring finger, barely touching my hand at all. He didn't even support my left hand with his other hand. Wow, he really doesn't like me. What happened next was even worse. He reached out and snatched the groom's ring before I could pick it up. He put it on himself and then stood facing the priest as if he had finished his business. I was the only one standing awkwardly facing him, trying to pick up the ring. The guests from the groom's side burst into laughter, and the guests from the bride's side looked like they would rise up in anger at any moment. I wasn't okay with it, but showing my displeasure would only make things worse. I kissed the children lightly on the cheeks and turned to face the priest. I felt a faint chill radiating from Declan and thought to myself, yeah, it's okay to not have a man in my life. I should be content to have a good life and a healthy body after having nothing. But I'll be punished if I'm greedy enough to want a man. A life of leisurely enjoyment of my hobbies without fear of being beaten by my father or brother. How nice. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to use the heir's excuse to sleep with that handsome, fit man a few times. If that doesn't work out and I'm lonely, I'll make a lover later. Okay, that's it. I resolved once again to give up on the row in the row fan and enjoy the fan to the fullest. The reception, which I was worried would be too crowded and bustling, ended early in a rather chilly atmosphere. I never thought I'd be so grateful that the 2 families don't get along. Liz seemed worried that I might be upset, but I was actually grateful. My dress was too low cut, and I had to keep my back straight all day, which made my spine ache like it was broken at every juncture. Not to mention my feet in high-heeled, uncomfortable shoes and my swollen calves. Just when I wanted to scream that this was torture, Liz, at the Duchess's request, escorted me to the bridal chamber. A waiting maid stripped me of my embarrassing and uncomfortable dress and changed me into a nightgown. I thought I was going to die before the story began. I breathed a sigh of relief that I was still alive. After sending the maid away, Liz looked hesitant to say something. "Is there anything you'd like to tell me, Miss Liz?" "Oh, well." I could have pretended not to know, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk to the female lead, no matter how tired I was. Besides, one of the survival rules for a villainous possession story is to befriend a kind female lead. A kind and righteous Liz would never avoid my friendly approach. Laughing slyly to myself like a character hiding a plan, I realized that Liz was beautiful as she fidgeted with her hands, hesitating to open her mouth. Dressed in a simple yet classy ivory dress, she was even more dazzling than I was moments before, when I was covered in sparkling jewelry. She was more suited to the image of a chaste, shy bride, which was probably what the writer was going for. I apologize on behalf of Declan for his rudeness to Miss Edith today, and I hope you don't hate him too much, because as cold and blunt as he may seem on the outside, he's actually a deeply caring person. I remember this scene. In this scene from the original story, Liz talks to Edith first as she does now. Then she explodes at Liz, who tells her not to hate Declan, and says, "How dare you wear a white dress to someone else's wedding, and how dare you mention Declan's name in front of me, his wife?" Honestly, as a reader, I know all the reasons why Liz said that. But for Edith, who had to listen to it without knowing what was going on, I think she had every right to be upset. But who am I? I'm the one who read the whole book. I completely understand. Declan was forced into a marriage he didn't want to be in, and I'm sure he's unhappy about it. But that doesn't mean I hate him. After all, he's my husband. I tried to sound harmless to Liz, who would soon meet Declan and tell him my story. It worked, and Liz's face lit up. "You're so mature and sweet, Miss Edith." "Oh my, Miss Liz. You are very kind, and your dress looks great on you today." "No. I think it looks great because of you." "I mean it." "Wow, can she really be this pretty?" I wish I could bite down on those plump cheeks and munch on them. "Liz, ditch Cliff and come live with me. I'll take care of you." You must be tired, but I've been holding on to you too long. "I'm sorry. You can rest, and Declan will be here later." The blush on her cheeks was cute. I'm sure it's embarrassing to think about Declan's first night after being like brother and sister for 5 years. But don't worry, Liz. It's not going to happen. I waved to Liz as she walked away, and I was finally left alone in the silence. Is the wedding episode finally over? Flopping down on the bed, I sighed and threw off the nightgown the maid had painstakingly put on me, and soaked in the bathtub on the far side of the room behind the curtain. It's nice and hot. The bathtub was set aside for the couple to wash themselves after finishing their lovemaking. It was a little hot, but it was just the right temperature for me, who loved going to the sauna in my previous life. As I soaked in the hot water, the aches and pains in my body seemed to slowly dissipate. Being the daughter-in-law of a duke's family means you can have a maid help you fill the bathtub. That's amazing. As annoying as Count Regelhoff was, and as cold as Declan was, this possession was a blessing in disguise. It's an inconvenient world without smartphones and the internet, but I have luxuries I never imagined when I was Choi Min-ji. In this world, there are books, plays, operas, hunting tournaments, picnics, parties, and balls. I don't have to go to work. I'm free from housework. I don't have to worry about the balance in my bank account. And I don't have to worry about my brother threatening to borrow money in my name. Now, if I could only cut ties with my family. I have the confidence to live quietly and enjoy my life in the Ludwig family without disturbing the male lead, female lead, or even the second male lead, my husband. But Count Riegelhoff is a different matter. Even if I live quietly, if Count Riegelhoff behaves according to the original story, I will be accused of being a spy for my family, and my head will be cut off. It is a suspicious marriage, indeed, a conspiracy. Duke Ludwig suspected Count Riegelhoff of being in league with Archduke Langston, who coveted the emperor's throne. Then Count Riegelhoff offered a marriage alliance to prove his innocence. It was rumored that Count Riegelhoff favored his daughter Edith. So this was a hostage situation. Declan was understandably reluctant, but Duke Ludwig, who had to hold Count Riegelhoff's leash for the time being, persuaded him. This is where Declan's heartbreaking narrative of falling in love with Liz begins. I love you, Liz. I may be another woman's husband on a piece of paper, but my soul will always be yours. I remember the episode where Declan, locked in a dark room, says that line with one hot tear running down his cheek. I can't let this ship sail. The writer wants to toy with the readers. Liz wants to start a harem, and all sorts of other silly comments filled the comment section. In the end, Declan had no choice but to abide by the decision of his father, the Duke. The good of the family was more important. That's the sadness of being a second male lead. Along the way, the machinations of Cliff, the male lead, may have intervened. On the surface, it would seem that Declan would be more obsessed with Liz, but in reality, the seemingly gentle Cliff was far more insane. Maybe that's why Declan was eliminated early in the story before things got too serious. Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to take a rest tonight. I'm tired. Pushing the complicated thoughts aside for tomorrow, I relaxed. I'd been on edge all week since I possessed Edith, and now I'm tired. Drowsiness poured over me as I relaxed, so I laid my head in the bathtub and dozed off. As a result, I didn't hear someone open the door and walk in. You're a bad bride washing yourself before your groom arrives. Ah. I was startled by the sudden sound of a man's voice and hurriedly covered my chest. Who? Is there anyone else in the bridal chamber besides the groom? Or is there someone else you're waiting for? Qui Declan? Declan's brow creased, not sure if he was offended by being called by his first name or if he just hated everything about Edith. But his presence here was a surprise for Edith. I thought you wouldn't come. In the original story, there is a scene where Declan and Liz have a conversation around this time. When she tells him to be nice to Edith, Declan grabs her wrist and asks her if she means it, looks at her with desperation in his eyes, and is about to kiss her before Cliff arrives and interrupts. In the end, Declan leaves Liz with Cliff and retreats to his room to drown his sorrows in alcohol. If he does that in the original story, isn't that mean he doesn't enter the bridal chamber? Declan snorted at my answer. Well, at least you have some sense, he replied. Of course I do. You avoided even the contact of sharing a wedding ring, and I'd be a fool not to see that. Declan stiffened, not expecting to be attacked. But I didn't expect him to feel sorry for me at all. To him, Elise Richter was nothing more than the daughter of a cunning count, and the cause of his love's frustration. Did you expect a passionate courtship? As expected, he retorted with disdain. Rationally, I should be angry too. But right now, I was just bothered by everything, sleepy, and realizing that my life depended on not being hated by Declan. Also, it was physiologically impossible to be angry at that face of his. I'm just telling you what happened. And I'm telling you that I thought you wouldn't come here today because I saw how reluctant you were to have any contact with me. So I thought, are you going to sleep here tonight? I said it in the softest voice I could muster, but I don't know how it sounded to him. He glared at me in displeasure, then turned and walked away without answering. Why are you here? Has there been any changes to the original story, or is it still the same? But I don't have the energy to think about it right now. I got out of the half-cooled bathtub and dried myself off. Tonight, I'm going to sleep soundly in that fluffy bed. No more worries. Declan, shouldn't you have gone to the bridal chamber? Liz stood on the moonlit second-floor balcony, looking just as she had when they'd parted ways earlier. The ivory dress she was wearing was so much like a bride's. Declan wanted to take her hand and lead her to his bedroom. But as much as he wanted to, she pushed him away, urging him to go to the bridal chamber. I've been there. Then why are you here again? I had no expectations for tonight, and neither did she. Though it was a bit of a surprise. Liz's eyes widened at Declan's answer. What do you mean? Obviously, a while ago. She was already in the bathtub by herself, dozing off. Yes? Declan chuckled at Liz's confusion. Liz, it's a problem that you think everyone is good. But Miss Edith is a good person, and she was so generous to me at the dinner a week ago. That's because she was aware of my father's eyes, the corners of her mouth quivering with a forced smile. No way. She was so sweet to me today. You'll have to think about whether she was really being sweet or smiling while being sarcastic. Declan couldn't agree with Liz, no matter how fondly she spoke of Edith. Count Riegelhoff is a man who pretends to be cultured and kind on the outside, but is really a snake on the inside. Having grown up under such a man, there's no way his daughter could be normal. He pretends to be blind to the hypocrisy of it all now, but it's clear that Edith came to the duchy to help her father with his work. He married her out of necessity to prevent Count Riegelhoff from moving freely, but Declan had no intention of making the marriage work or lasting. That greedy Count Riegelhoff will dig his own grave before long, and then I can throw that woman out too. Declan clenched his molars as he thought this, and Liz furrowed her fine brow and gave him a troubled look. What's wrong, Liz? No, well, after listening to your words, I wonder if Miss Edith was angry with me before. What? She was angry with you? Oh, no. That's not what I meant. I think I made a mistake. Tell me what happened, Liz. Declan's eyes quickly turned fierce. Liz chewed her lip, then sighed heavily. Earlier, when I was walking Miss Edith out the door, she complimented me on my dress. At the time, I thought it was just a compliment, and I was happy. Liz fiddled with the hem of her dress. The dress she was wearing today was bought for her by Declan, who wanted her to wear it at his wedding. She'd resisted the idea of wearing a white dress to a wedding, but Declan had begged her, saying, "This is ivory, not white." Besides, Edith's dress is white with a lot of gold threads, so it's a lot more glamorous than this dress. So she thought it would be okay to wear something more modest. But if Edith's compliment, "Your dress looks great on you," was meant to be sarcastic, she must have looked funny for grinning widely in front of her without realizing what she really meant. Do you think Miss Edith was offended? Declan gritted his teeth at the mention of Liz's dress. How cowardly to talk to the powerless Liz, when you know very well that it was Ludwig's family who prepared her dress. But Declan couldn't see Liz heartbreak at the mention of this. No way. Given the dress she was wearing today, there was no way she'd be sensitive about your dress. Oh, Miss Edith was so pretty today. So sparkly, and she looked vulgar. What do you mean, Declan? How can you call your own wife vulgar? Liz asked, looking shocked. Declan quickly calmed his ferocity. I'm sorry. That was a harsh word to use in front of you. Your apology should not be to me, but to Miss Edith. Don't you even feel sorry for her? She's come here alone, where she doesn't know anyone, trusting only you, and you're supposed to look after her. But Liz's concern for Edith broke Declan's heart. He grabbed her wrist and asked in a low voice, Did you mean what you said? Declan, you're mean, Liz. Do you really have no idea how I got through today? Liz's blue eyes trembled uneasily. Declan was sure she knew his heart. Liz was someone who could not express any opinion about this marriage. Maybe this was her way of trying to soothe his heart. Liz. Declan, I'm. As Liz was at a loss for words, Declan lifted her chin. The look of surprise on her face was adorable. How comforting it was to see such sweetness and innocence, like spring sunshine. Declan slowly brought his lips to hers. Liz. If it weren't for the interruption, Declan might have been able to kiss her. See, Cliff. Pulling away from Declan, Liz waved at Cliff with an awkward smile. That guy is really... Declan growled lowly, but Liz pretended not to hear. And then Cliff, who had ruined Declan's precious moment, walked over, looking as if he hadn't seen the two about to kiss at all. I'm surprised you're not in your room. It's late at night, but Declan, why are you out here, leaving the bride alone? If you feel sorry for her, my brother, go and comfort her. I don't want to create a scandal about coveting my brother's woman. With Cliff refusing to back down when it came to Liz, Declan was finally forced to turn his back. If word got out that the Ludwig brothers were fighting over Liz on the second son's wedding night, it was Liz who would be in trouble. He didn't want to make it worse for Liz, who had enough trouble with rumors as it was. Feeling his heart ache like it had been cut by a sharp knife, Declan went into his bedroom and grabbed a drink. It was one of those nights when he needed a drink to help him fall asleep. I tried to sleep in until the sun was high in the sky, but in the morning, my eyes opened by themselves. Even though I had already possessed Edith, my biological clock alarm as an office worker still went off at 6 a.m. Oh, I'm tired. Huh? Naturally, I was expecting to feel like my whole body was going to break, but it was actually quite bearable. Wow, this is the stamina of a 22-year-old, no, a healthy person. I wasn't even this fit when I was 22, so this must be a basic fitness issue, not an age issue. This is so good. I love it. I'm so happy that I didn't get sick after all I went through yesterday. And as the saying goes, a healthy body leads to a healthy mind, so not. Being in pain made me look at the situation more positively. If I do well, I might be able to live as a beloved daughter-in-law. My husband may have lost his mind to another woman, but my in-laws won't be the same. I was told that I would hate my in-laws when I got married, but I didn't care as long as I could be loved by the people I called in-laws. Okay, first of all, greet them. It was a bit of a Korean tradition, but I don't think any in-laws would dislike their daughter-in-law greeting them the morning after the wedding. Besides, isn't one of the rules of survival for a possessed villain in a fan novel to win the heart of the main supporting character? I jumped up and down with excitement, then paused. Should I drop some blood? Or something on the bed? In some fan novels, a noble couple would go through the bedding where they spent their first night and check for bloodstains. Only then would the marriage be officially recognized. But I quickly shook my head. Declan's eyes would jump out from glaring at me if I did something like that. Because he's a man who will keep his virginity for Liz. He is indeed a handsome virgin, but deceptively taking the virginity of a second male lead is a bit much. Would the original Declan, who didn't give up his love even after being rejected by Liz, have remained a virgin until his death? I mourned Declan in my heart and tugged at the string. As I pulled the string, I couldn't help but smile. Did you sleep well, my lady? Yes. Could you please wash my face and groom me? Sure. I'll have the water ready in a moment. The well-mannered maid, who, unlike Sophia, could not make eye contact with me and bowed her head, retreated without a sound of footsteps. Lady, she said. No matter how many times I've heard it, it's a strange word. I'm married, but I'm still called a lady. For if I were called Madame Ludwig, one might confuse me with the Duchess. Sooner or later, Declan would be granted some of the Ludwig family's estates and the title of count, and only then would I be called a countess. The original Edith died without ever hearing the word countesses. I took a deep breath, realizing that if I messed up, I could follow in her footsteps. With the help of the maid, I tried to transform myself into a true daughter-in-law. But the problem was the clothes. The Riegelhofs had sent me a number of dresses to show off their wealth, but they were all so extravagant and cut deep in the chest that I didn't know where to look. "What did you say your name was?" "Anna, miss." "Yes, Anna. Go to the boudoir and ask them to cover the bust of this dress in a more natural way. Take off all the frills, now." "Yes, miss." In no time, Anna obediently grabbed the dress and ran to the boudoir. Seeing her obedient attitude, I realized how badly Sophia, the Riegelhof's maid, had treated me. Well, to her, I must have been the Riegelhof's pet dog. Just someone dressed up pretty to look at, but nothing more than a dog. It was a stroke of fortune to leave Sophia behind. When Anna returned, she brushed my hair and applied a light coat of makeup, while the Ludwig family's quick-fingered maids altered my dress and sent it on its way. I asked them to cover up my ample bosom, and in that short time, they managed to remove the ruffles and make it look like it was originally designed like this. After removing the glamorous embellishments, the dress was finally wearable. I'll have to get the rest of my dresses altered soon, because how am I going to wear them? I looked at the pile of Edith's dresses and sighed softly. Even just a glance at them is enough to make my head spin. If I wore those, I'd definitely be labeled extravagant and vanity Edith by the people here. Anyway, for now, the greeting came first. I changed into a more modest dress and sent Anna to announce my arrival to the Duke and Duchess. Fortunately, the Duke and Duchess did not refuse my visit. "I think you can go right now." "Yeah, okay, but how do I look?" "You look beautiful." Even if an AI replied, it would be more polite than that. People in this mansion are probably wary of me. Perhaps the maids were also ordered to be careful with their words in my presence. I decided to be generous and understanding with Anna. "If you say so, I suppose." "Well then, will you escort me?" "Yes, my lady." Straightening my back, but with a slight smile on my face, so as not to appear too arrogant, I made my way through the hallway to the small parlor that connected to the Duke and Duchess chamber.